Welcome. Perfect. Thanks for setting the recording there. Welcome to the 2025 Tree Fruit Production Guide Update meeting. I'm happy to be hosting this with the BCFGA on this sunny Wednesday. Thanks very much for taking the time in this very busy time of year to join us. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we are hosting this meeting from Kelowna, located on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Syilx Okanagan people. We have a full agenda ahead today. Here's a bit of a rundown on how the meeting will flow. We'll start with an update from Gail Nelson at the BCFGA on some upcoming events that the BCFGA is planning, and then we'll hear from entomologist Evan Esch with an update from the Sterile Insect Release Program. Molly Thurston will then provide an update on the BC Decision Aid System. And then we'll move into updates to the production guide spray guide. So we'll start with entomology from Dr. Susanna Achiampong. We'll get a herbicide update from Garion Lohendorf and a pathology update from Katie Goldenhar. And Katie will also provide a very fun presentation on fungicides, so make sure you stick around for that. This meeting should wrap up around 11:15, roughly, with a few final notes and updates on other changes that have been made to the guide over the past year. And fortunately for us, Rebecca and Gail at the BCFGA will be recording pack points for this meeting. So there's one A category point available for attending today's meeting. If you are collecting points, make sure that you put your name, registration number, and ideally your expiry date, as well as your email or phone number into the chat so that can be recorded. And I think that's all of the housekeeping items from me, and I will now pass it over to Gail Nelson for her update.
Thank you, Lindsay. So I am going to be brief. I appear at the start of the program, but maybe this is information. This is additional information. I just wanted to remind everybody on the call that you can actually print your spray schedules, and we'll go a little bit more into the updates later on in the program. But this is just a reminder that there are multiple ways that you can access your updated spray schedules for 2025. I see Jack's hand. Do you have a question, Jack? Or is that just an error? Anyway, we'll take the questions at the end of the presentations. I think that makes things a little bit smoother. So you can print your spray schedules by going to the Tree Fruit Production Guide webpage. You can select the spray icon. There's a yellow arrow that's just pointing to where you can actually select the spray icon. Then you can go on to select the commodity of your choice, whether it's apples, cherries, apricots, etc. And then there's a print icon that appears on the top right-hand corner of your page, and you can make the appropriate selections there. The other way that you can get your spray schedules is by going to the BCFGA website. You can select our member services icon, and there is a tab there for spray schedules, and it will take you right back to the Tree Fruit Production Guide, where you can print your spray schedules, or you can reach out to us here. There's an order form that you can complete online, as well as you are quite welcome to send us an email at info@bcfga, or you can email Rebecca Atchison. She's on this call at ratchison@bcfga.com. You can also email me, Gail Nelson, at gnelson@bcfga.com. The other thing that I wanted to also let you know is that we've received a lot of questions about opportunities for growers to collect pack points, and the fact that there may not necessarily be as many events where that opportunity is presented. So we are putting on two courses or two sets of courses this spring. The first one is a pesticide applicator course where you'll be going through the full manual and then doing your exam to get your certificate. We will provide more details about that in our Friday file and in emails to come. There's also going to be some field calibration courses that we'll run in May as well. We'll provide additional details on those as well to let you know where they'll be held and what will be covered at each. But we want to at least do one for cherries, one for apples, and do some demonstrations with water sensitive papers in both. The training courses, they're open to all interested growers. However, additional fees may apply for non-BCFGA members. But again, we'll provide more details in the coming days. So look out for that. Thank you, everybody.
Great, thanks, Gail. And for folks who rolled in 5 minutes late, relatable, please see the chat for Rebecca's note on information to provide to get your A pack point from attending this meeting. All right, so Evan Esch, entomologist with Okanagan Sterile Insect Release Program, is up next. So Evan, I will give the floor to you.
Thanks very much, Lindsay. Lindsay, can you see my screen? Let's see.
Yeah, it's showing the presentation mode to us now.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let me just try that in not presentation mode. Let me try that again. Screen 2, here we go. Now, are you seeing my full screen?
No, just you.
Just me. Just me again still.
Yeah.
Okay.
You haven't shared your screen, Evan.
Okay. Screen 2. And now?
Just you.
Just me. Okay. I'm going to go back to this one.
Okay.
And so now you're seeing my screen, but you're also seeing the little sidebar.
That's exactly right. But it
Okay.
looks good.
I'll do this. Is this going to be okay?
Perfect.
Let's do this. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Thanks very much for your time. I've got just a very, very short update to you about the SIR program. I don't really have any exciting horticultural information for you, but I have two kind of useful pieces of information. One of them is kind of an ask on behalf of the SIR program and our workers. So SIR staff are going to be returning to your orchards at this time of year. So at any point now from the season, SIR staff are heading out to your orchards. SIR's plan is to be on your orchard same day of the week, every week. And our staff will have notified you by email which day that is. So all season long, say you've got an orchard, SIR is going to try to be there on Tuesday at roughly the same time. So if you happen to be spraying that day and there's something with a restricted entry interval on your orchard that's potentially hazardous for our staff, please reach out to the SIR program or your SIR supervisor, shoot them a text, give them a phone call. We have a joint responsibility to keep our workers safe. And so, yeah, please do your best to communicate that with us. So we really appreciate your help with that. The other very short thing I want to talk to you guys about today, SIR program has a very extensive network of pheromone baited traps. So we've got almost 3,000 pheromone baited traps in all the apple and pear orchards in the Okanagan and Similkameen. We're making a slight reduction in the total number of traps we operate. So there's going to be about a 15% reduction in the traps we're operating this year. So our trap density is going from one trap 0.95 hectares to about one trap 1.1 hectare. So our network of traps is still going to be very extensive. It's still going to be one of the most extensive in the world. It's going to be higher than what they're doing in Ontario and in Washington. But we're just going to do this to cut back a little bit on some of the costs of our program, some of our staff time, and some of the expenses. And so most of these traps are being removed from areas that have very large contiguous orchards that don't have any history of codling moth. And our trap network will be changing year over year to respond to codling moth showing up in areas. So our trap network will be kind of becoming more dynamic. So the main reason of this is to help keep costs down, but I'm not concerned this will have any negative impacts on the quality of service that we provide. I do want to bring up one piece of information that this could potentially impact orchards that are planning on exporting to Taiwan. So if you are exporting any fruit to Taiwan, please reach out to the SIR program so we can make sure that you are meeting all the requirements for the export program. We've already reached out to all of the packers and the CFIA. In the last 2 years, no one's exported any fruit to Taiwan, so we don't think this will have much of an impact. But if it's something that you think you're involved in, let us know, and we can make sure that you can meet all those export requirements. So just very quickly, I want to point you guys to our online trap viewer. So I know all of you folks receive emails with your wild counts for all your orchards. There may be some changes to your trap locations as we're sort of rolling out this trap reduction. But if you want to see all of your up-to-date trap information and all of the up-to-date trap information for all of the orchards in the Okanagan, so you can see what's happening not only in your property, what's happening next door. You can see all of that on our website, uploaded in real time. So go to oksir.org. There's this little logo with trap data. Click on that logo. There's this trap viewer application. It works well with Google Chrome or Safari. So click on that, and that will load our trap viewing application. So you will see a map of the whole Okanagan and Similkameen Valley. As you zoom in, you'll see hopefully some recognizable features. So here we can see Kelowna. As we zoom in more, we can see specifically all of the fruit blocks will show up on that map once we zoom in. So here's Burns Road in Kelowna. Those big pink lines are the outlines of the property boundaries. And then all those purple blocks are pears, and those green blocks are apple blocks. So this allows you to see all of the fruit blocks that SIR has on file for your property. If you're not good at using the map, you can just type your property address in that search bar, and it will zoom you in on your orchard. If this doesn't really mean anything to you, all these little purple squares, you can click on this little icon in the top right-hand corner here, and it allows you to change the background of the map. So say you want to see like the satellite imagery of your farm to help you relate better to what's going on in this image. So you can overlay that image here, and then now we can see the purple overlining all of those satellite imageries. So you can see there's apple blocks there, cherry blocks, peach blocks. Those other blocks won't be on here, but you can see your house and your road and make sure you're looking at the right farm. To see the wild counts week by week, on the bottom of the window, you can see there's a little gray box with the date, and there's little backwards and forwards arrows. So if you click the forward arrow, you can see how many wilds were caught that week. So you can see there's some green zeros and some yellow ones. Say we click ahead one more week, you can see, oh yeah, there's a red 2. That's something that I should start paying attention to, and SIR will have a conversation with you as whether or not you should spray when you see that number of wilds. And say you want to go back and see how many wilds you caught all season long, you can drag those little sliders and see how many wilds you've caught over a more than 1 week period. So this will allow you to see where all of your traps are, if they've moved, and what the wild activity is in your area. And so when you're on here, definitely a great opportunity to see if all your apples and pears are accounted for. This is important as people are planting new things to make sure that you're getting the right number of insects delivered to your property. If you need accurate information for crop insurance, SIR program has a very accurate database of the total number of apples and number of pears we have on your property. And so it's important that this number is up to date. So if you want to make sure you have that accurate acreage, you can reach out to the SIR main line or our email for that information. And then the last thing here, these are all the supervisors. Hopefully you've all received emails from these people. These are your first point of contact for any information about wilds you're catching, or service days of our staff on your property, or a need for sort of updated apple or pear acreage. Yeah, that's all I have to share with you guys today. Do you have any questions out there?
Yeah, Evan, this is Wilfred Mennel here. I have a question about movement of bins. Who do we notify where there's been early movement of bins? Or do you need to be notified? But it seems
That's great. Thanks for the question, Wilfred. So obviously Wilfred's concern is that codling moth can infest apple bins and move into the area. So your SIR supervisor, who's should be sending you emails. So for the Similkameen Valley, it's Sue Claire. You can reach out to her and let her know if there's a new pile of bin piles that have showed up. I know we've just been down in that area and there's lots of bins with names I haven't seen on them before. So that's the best place. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, this is a movement of several hundred bins, so I was a little concerned about it.
Okay. We'll make sure we connect.
Notify you anyway in the hopes that you can address it. So I'll talk to Sue.
Okay, thanks very much, Mr. Mennel.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Evan. If anyone has any other questions for Evan, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll be monitoring that and we'll get your question answered. All right, next up is Molly Thurston with an update on BC DAS. I think I saw Molly on the call.
Thanks, Lindsay. I can share, hopefully. Give this a try, everyone. How is that looking?
Looks great.
Okay, super.
You can see
All
the sidebar, but oh, there we go. That's presentation mode. Perfect.
Okay, super. I will dive in here. Thanks for the opportunity, everyone, to speak to you just briefly about the BC DAS program. We are very happy to have received continued funding through the Cross Commodity Leadership Project and with some of the funding that had come into the tree fruit stabilization and from the Ministry of Agriculture. So we are continuing the DAS project over the next 3 seasons, and this is available to you on the same format and platform. I did want to just take a couple of quick minutes to update you on a few things that are new. This year we have a new feature. If you've logged on, you'll see where new features are. There's a little new icon and there are phenology maps. This is something that the team at WSU uses to help to indicate degree day development and pest development, utilizing mostly the temperatures. So you'll see a map of the area with colored dots like are represented on your screen right now that show as the risk for, say, in this case, fire blight increases, the dots go darker in each of the relative regions. And that is available for a number of our models for disease and pests. So check that out. It's really a nice overview and a visual of what's happening in throughout the different growing regions. The Parasilla model is also active this year. It is available to everyone. It's been in a beta form for the last couple seasons. Some of your advisors and growers have been using it. This year, you'll find that model on your dashboard. And just a reminder that you go back into the stations that you have chosen, and you'll open that up and edit the station and add the models there. If you have any trouble, please reach out and let me know. We've been actively updating the spray calendar, and thank you to our ministry colleagues, Susanna and Katie, for updating the production guide as we go along. And the spray calendar, as you know, feeds into the DAS system, so you'll start to see a number of the new registrations and products in those little spray calendar boxes below the models as well. We had a really great request for a general degree day calculator. This request is in progress, and some of you are using the Farm West site in order to look at the growing degree days for a station. And Farm West has a really neat feature where you can change the base to allow for perhaps, say, a base of 4 degrees Celsius or 10 degrees Celsius, and look at models from that, changing those bases and temperatures. We're hoping to add that feature into DAS, and I'm working with the programmers on that. And I just wanted to make a note about stations. Thank you very much to those growers who are hosting stations. I really do appreciate when you reach out to us, please. If you are replanting, please let us know if you need to move that station, and we will help you to resite that. I know we've got a couple stations that are in that situation, and thanks to those growers for letting us know early, and then we'll get back to you as to where to move it or how best to move it. And our programmer and weather station contractor is very able to help you to do that in the right way. Couple seasonal reminders. We are definitely seeing green tip throughout most of the regions. Please do go into the SCAB model now and set your green tip date. This is a photograph that I took yesterday in Lake Country of Gala, so you can see the development and the stage, and that is solidly in green tip and beyond with the warm weather. For fire blight, you will need to go into the model and set your infection history from last season. You'll say whether the infection was present or not active at all. It is very likely, again, if we continue to have warm and rainy conditions. We've had a lot more fire blight inoculum and orchards that are impacted the last few years, so the risk may be high this year as well. And for cherry powdery mildew, this is the time to set your bud burst date, and you will also keep track of your first irrigation. Obviously, it's probably a little bit early. We've had a lot of rainfall. However, when we get irrigation that thoroughly wets the trunks, we utilize that information to activate the cherry powdery mildew model. All right, here's just a couple photographs again that I've taken in the last couple of days of what's happening in the season. I'd mentioned the green tip, which, you know, we're actively there and beyond, especially if you're in the warmer regions. The next photograph on the screen is taken from an ambrosia orchard, and I am starting to see some signs of woolly apple aphid showing up, but also the amount of canker that has been seen, fungal canker, over the last couple seasons, especially following the cold snaps, really is quite dramatically different. And so, you know, that's something to keep an eye on, and perhaps is something that we can talk about a bit more in canker management throughout the season. There's an image here of pears. Obviously, we're moving ahead. We're, you know, at like peak psylla flight in many areas. Egg laying is active, so many growers have already put on dormant oil sprays, and if you haven't, it certainly probably should be thinking about it at this spud stage. And in Kelowna, this was a photo of cherries taken yesterday. We're starting to see, you know, those warm temperatures are pushing buds, and hearing from colleagues down south that we're seeing some first white and, you know, could even be into bloom relatively quickly. So things are definitely moving along out there, and it's time to be watching the weather and watching those models. Gail has mentioned our extension meetings that are coming up. please do watch the Friday File and the Cross Commodity Leadership's industry calendar for those events and more. I would like to host some DAS tailgates and just put a request out here that if you would like to host that in your orchard, I'm always looking for willing candidates. I will bring the cookies and the coffee, you know, we'll bring the handouts and the table. You would just provide the space for people to park and gather. So if you'd like to be a host in your area and could invite some neighbors to come and chat with us, that would be great. One of the meetings I'd particularly like to have is around fire blight this year, because my understanding from the suppliers is that Blossom Protect is not widely available, and that has really been one of the products that we have relied on. And so I'd like to talk to you about some other strategies with new biologicals as well. So we can discuss any of the models and any of the spring strategies that you want to take for your pest control and IPM. So please text me if you're interested. Also, just a reminder that this is the time of year when we often sign on and have trouble with our account. If your account has gone dormant, please do let us know. If you are using an email address, you've been using an email address that you no longer use to sign in, you can email me or text me and we can troubleshoot it that way. There is a help function within the DAS system, and that feedback and information comes back to me so I can help you with that. We basically just need to reach out to Washington's programmers to reactivate the accounts. They do go dormant after about a year of non-use. It's a little bit more than that actually, but you know, on about an 18-month cycle, they will go dormant. So if you're having that trouble and you're not finding your account to be active, we can quickly rectify that for you if you just let us know, please. All right, and if you're new to DAS and you don't know how to get started, we do have some instructional videos on the homepage. I'm always open to talking about the system with you, happy to help you. We can either jump on a Zoom call, we can do this in the orchard, as you would like. You know, part of my role with the coordination is to help new users to get familiar with the system and to encourage you to use it throughout the season. So please do reach out. I'm more than happy to do that for you. And finally, I just want to thank and acknowledge the funding that has come through the Ministry of Agriculture, the work that has been done by SIR to maintain this program, and the Cross Commodity Leadership project team that is helping to administer this program and keeping us on track throughout the season. So I'm going to pause there on DAS to just find out if there's any questions or any comments. I didn't see if there was anything in the chat, Lindsay.
No questions in the chat yet.
Okay, super. So we can get into technical information in the field, but I did just want to take 2 minutes to update you on the nursery stock access. So I'm looking at my phone because it's been ringing off the hook because we have our first truck at the border, and I've just received a message that we have good news. The shipment has just undergone inspection and will be passed through. So this is a big achievement for us. We've been working on getting the systems approach for unfumigated trees to cross the US border from nurseries in the Pacific Northwest, Washington, and Oregon for many, many years. And a huge thanks to all the colleagues who've participated in this. The systems approach, which is a trapping program for Oriental fruit moth, you might recall I've spoken about it before, was approved in 2024. We had 3 nurseries qualify. 2 are ornamental nurseries, 1 tree fruit nursery, Gold Crown Nursery in Quincy, qualified, and they have just sent us our first shipment of trees. So we're very excited to see that coming across. It has been a bit of a struggle the last couple of days. I've been a little bit nervous about how it would go through the process, but we're here. So thankfully now we will start to monitor those shipments once the blocks get planted out. We have agreed to do an Oriental fruit moth trapping program in a couple blocks this year just to maintain assurances that we are not introducing an Oriental fruit moth to the area, as it has been a quarantine pest, and plan to continue some outreach and education on Oriental fruit moth, as well as the movement of nursery stock. So that is great. some great progress for this year. We've been very lucky to have the support of the Northwest Nursery Improvement Association and their industry folks throughout this. We have been fielding some questions from Eastern Canada, and we did do a dive into whether it was possible to have unfumigated product come from Ontario, for example. Unfortunately, what we learned through that process was that there are a number of other pests of concern that are not present in the Okanagan and other BC growing regions. And so it is not possible at this time to apply exactly the same systems approach, as it is very specific to Oriental fruit moth. That doesn't mean that we can't keep working on it, and it's certainly still on the radar as we go forward, as are continued research trials like Agriculture Canada's work on hot water treatments, etc. All right, so there have been some questions about growers wanting to access trees. As I mentioned, there's currently the one registered nursery, which is Gold Crown. If you are interested in utilizing other nursery suppliers, I would say that you really do need to reach out to those nurseries and encourage them to work with the Northwest Nursery Association to get onto the program, as it probably is about a year's lead time in order to implement the trapping program and do the record keeping and arrange for the inspections with the USDA in order to meet those standards and be approved to ship into Canada. So I would suggest that if you have a nursery in mind, that you start working with them or start contacting them about that. We're happy to provide any assistance on that as well. I can speak to the nurseries if they have questions about it. We really do need to pre-order trees. The trees that are in this shipment were ordered over 2 years ago with anticipation that we would continue with the systems approach. A bit of a risk, but thankfully it's okay. But you do have to plan and pre-order in advance, as you know, this is quite a commitment from the nursery, and so they need to be assured that that material is going to be purchased and utilized. There are a number of logistics to get product across the border, especially right now with the new trade requirements and tariff requirements. It's very unclear in many ways, how that's affecting the movement of many goods. So one of the first steps is a registration with CFIA to get an import permit for plant material. And then, of course, there's a number of steps with transportation and particularly brokerage that have a number of new requirements as a result of the tariffs. So, it is well worth looking at, this plan very holistically and, trying to come up with what is best suited. For planting, I do want to just highlight a couple things that, these are bare root trees that are coming across. So again, time is of the essence. They leave the cooler, they're bare root. Ideally, we don't want them in transit for too long. This load we've been working on since, I think 7 a.m. yesterday morning. So the transit time can mean that things can dehydrate rather quickly. So preparing your site or preparing your cooler, having hydration of those roots is really going to help with having a successful planting come from trees that are being shipped in this manner. You'd want to plant soon after arrival and, of course, be prepared for irrigation and other nutrition. So, we do want to really promote best practices for planting to ensure that the trees that you've invested in are received in good condition and are planted and successful for you. So throughout this process, if growers are interested in working with the nursery that is currently registered, you can reach out, we can chat about that. I know that the staff there have been very responsive in terms of helping us to look at lists of what's available, etc. And if others are interested in pursuing other nurseries, please do let myself know or the BCFGA know, and we will continue down that path. I think that's all I've got, Lindsay. I will stop there, and
Excellent.
thanks very much for the opportunity to chat about those projects.
Thanks very much for your hard work on that. That's really exciting. Any questions for Molly? Okay, we will move on if that's the case, but feel free to put a question in the chat and I will follow up with Molly about it and try to get an answer. Before I move on to the production guide update section of the meeting, I just want to draw attention to the link that Kelly Garcia, project manager for the Cross Commodity Leadership Support Program, put in the chat. It's a link to the industry calendar, so please do check that out. And the events that Molly and Gail mentioned should be listed on that calendar. Okay, and also, if you were a little late to join us, please also direct message Rebecca so that she can record your attendance to this meeting. And also, please indicate your PAC certificate number, expiry date, phone number, and email in the chat so that can be recorded as well. Okay, hello, Susanna. Thank you for turning your video on. We'll give you the floor to present your entomology update. I can see your screen. Oh, perfect. That looks great. Oh, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Perfect.
All right. Good morning, everyone. This is going to be quick, just updates on a lot of pyrethroids. That's all we got. And then also a quick refresher on resistance management. So the first product that has been, we have the label expansion of Pyganic on cherries for the control of aphids. The application interval is 3 days, re-entry is 12 hours. The maximum allowed is 10 days and pre-harvest is 0 day. It's important that for this product, the pH of the spray mixture is very important. You have to have it between 5 and 7. Pyganic group 3, they are toxic to bees. So application timing, either in the morning or evening, preferably will be better. And then do not use it when you have bees foraging, and it's an organic product. The next one, we've had these products before. We have Upside. It was registered only on cherries for spotted wing Drosophila, but now the label has been expanded to include the whole stone fruit group. So it's registered for spotted wing Drosophila control. And with spotted wing Drosophila, normally the recommendation is to apply the product when the fruit is about to ripen. The application interval is 7 days, re-entry is 12 hours. A maximum of 2 applications are allowed per season, and you have a pre-harvest interval of 2 days. Pyrethroid, toxic to bees. The timing is important. And then these products will control only the adults, so they will not really get larvae once the maggots are in the fruit. With these Upside and then Ripcord and Mako, they don't do too well. The residual effect is really short when temperatures are very, very high. So above 25 degrees Celsius, the efficacy reduces quite a bit. So you should be aware of that. Ripcord has the same active ingredient, cypermethrin. The label has been expanded to cover all the stone fruit group. We have spotted wing for the control of spotted wing Drosophila. So application interval same as Upside, 7 days, re-entry 12 hours, maximum of 2 days, 2 applications, and pre-harvest interval of 2 days. And they are toxic to bees. We have done it all registered on palm fruits for the control of stink bugs. Unfortunately, we don't have it covering brown marmorated stink bug. Brown marmorated stink bug is a difficult stink bug to control. But at least we have something for stink bugs in palm fruits. So the timing is when you see the first sign of these stink bugs. The re-entry interval varies depending on the activity in the orchard. It's from 24 hours to 23 days. It's a maximum of 1 application per year. The pre-harvest interval, if you're doing hand harvesting, is 16 days, and then we don't do a lot of mechanical harvesting here. But if you do that, it's 14 days. And it's another group 3 is very toxic to bees. Do not apply when bees are foraging. In the past, for our production guide, we've really not promoted the use of pyrethroids because they tend to have lead to mite flare-ups. So if you look at our spray calendars, we don't have a lot of pyrethroids in there. But with the new pests that we are seeing and some of the lack of products, there are a few that probably we're going to be putting in the guide for some of the pests that we don't have anything to manage, to use against. Yeah. Matador is another product that we don't really, I looked at our spray calendars, we don't really have Matador in there, but it's been canceled for users on apples and peaches and since February 3rd. So Matador can no longer be used in apples and peaches for controlling any pest. I'll quickly do a refresher on resistance. Insecticide resistance. Normally, we want to maintain the products that we have. We are not getting a lot of new registrations. As you saw, a lot of the pyrethroids that we are getting label expansions for. But what is even insecticide resistance? Normally, when you have an insect population, it's not all the individuals in the populations that will be susceptible to the insecticides that you're using. We are all different. So there might be a few in there that you spray the insecticide genetically, they are able to survive the spray application. And with time, if you continue using the same insecticides over and over the same group, you have a lot of the resistant individuals reproducing, and then you are going to get, with time, most of that insecticide that you're using, most of the resistant population will be the dominant ones in there, and then you lose the effectiveness of that insecticide. And what can you do? We always talk about integrated pest management, using making sure you know the insect you're dealing with, the correct identification, you know a little bit about the biology. You use different combinations of management strategies. You have biological control, mating disruption. Here we have for codling moth, we have sterile insect releases. You have cultural approaches that you use as well. So these help at least help you use less of the insecticide, and then it helps a lot. We are also looking at thresholds. Do you spray for the insect pest because you're just seeing them? No, you look at monitoring, and then for codling moth, you have threshold populations. That's when you go in to spray. The life stage, what are we spraying for? Are we spraying adults? Are we spraying larvae? For spotted wing Drosophila, we know most of the products that we have will target the adults. So you make sure that the timing of your spray application is targeting the right stage of the insects that is susceptible to the spray. Normally, the spraying, the right conditions is very important. We talk about sprayer calibration, the right equipment. You make sure you spray when it's not too windy. The spray coverage is very important. A pest like scale insects, you need to make sure that you have the right coverage. Water volumes are important so that you target the insect and you get the best control possible. And the next step is make sure you don't use the same group of insecticide over and over again. So you rotate the insecticide mode of action. So what we have here, if you look at the label, delegate label, most of the labels on the front side of it, you have the group number. So you know the insecticide group. And then you do not use the same class of insecticide against successive generations. So if you look at this example, we have Delegate, Success, and Entrust. They have the same insecticide group 5. You use that for the first generation of codling moth. When you go to the summer generation, you cannot use a group 5 again. You need to use another group. So you could probably use Altocore, which is a group 28 or something else. Same example here, you have Confirm, which is a group 18. If you use that in the first generation, the next generation, you cannot use a group 18 again. You go in and you use a group 28. Can you use Delegate after Success? No, because they are the same group. And don't forget the good bugs, they all fit in. We've been talking about them over the years, and please recognize the different life stages. For our ladybugs, the larvae look like tiny little alligators. The pupa stage look like these little brown blobs on the leaves. Make sure you keep those because you're going to get ladybugs out of that. And then we have our flower flies. The larvae look like a tiny maggots, and they feed on a lot of aphids. So it's very important that all the different approaches that we use, IPM approaches, they help in maintaining and managing our pests, but then they also do help for us to keep our insecticides for longer without having all these resistance developing to some of these insecticides. Thank you very much for your time. And if you have any questions, I'll be able to answer that.
Any questions for Susanna? Okay, if not now, again, feel free to put them in the chat and we will get them answered. Okay, on to,
There
any
you go.
other question? Okay, thank you, Susanna, that was great. Next up, we have weed and herbicide specialist Garion Lohendorf joining us. Garion, I think I see you. Are you there?
I'm here. I'm here.
Perfect.
Just see if I can share my screen and it looks proper.
Okay.
Everybody can see that?
Looks great.
Okay, so I am actually going to accidentally repeat a little bit from Susanna for resistance. I should have talked to her a little bit before this presentation. But anyways, my name's Garion Lohendorf. I'm the weed and pesticide specialist for the BC Ministry of Ag and Food. I'm here today to give you some herbicide updates for the BC tree fruit industry. Okay. Oh, I'm jumping. So there's been 2 label updates. Post Ultra, it's no longer going to be available for purchase from the manufacturer, but it is still registered for the 2025 season. But after that, it will be deregistered. So if you do have some supply, it'd be good to use that up this season. Chateau WDG, it's being replaced with Chateau EZ. There's no rate changes, and Chateau WDG, it still is registered for the season, so you can still use it as the label with the label rates. So some of the new tank regulations that are coming in for mixing, the old regulations prior to 2025 was that you could put 2 products in a tank and mix them if they were registered for a crop after doing a jar test. If they didn't specify otherwise, the new regulations, both labels have to have some sort of language to mix both products together. So if one of the labels doesn't have any sort of wording about mixing, then you're not able to do that. I just wanted to give a little example here of what that would look like. So on a label here, I've got Post Ultra. You can see in the 3rd column there, it shows the tank mix partners. So all of those can be mixed with it, but you would have to verify with those labels as well if they can be mixed with that product. Manufacturers had until the end of 2024 to update their labels, so verify with the newest label. And this table just kind of explains it in a little more detail, but really the summary of it is if it's the label silent about tank mixing and you don't see anything about it, about the other product or even a general statement, you can't mix it. If both labels have a general mix statement or a specific statement, either or, you're able to mix that product. A couple other things, since there's no more updates that I have, I just wanted to add a couple items before the season gets into swing. So volatility, always like to remind people about this. So what is it? Above leaf temperature or temperatures of leaves above 25 degrees Celsius, you can have chemicals that will arise from that surface. They can act like a cloud and they can float. They will float irregularly, and you may have them damage some of your crop or a neighboring crop. So be aware of that. Some of the examples of those volatile herbicides could be dicamba and 2,4-D. So some resistance concerns. There's been a cross-Canada survey that's found multiple weeds with resistance in herbicides. BC was not included in that. Some of the herbicide groups that they found were 1, 2, 5, 9, and 14. And why we care about that? Because it costs us money. It means that we may have to use more chemicals in a different rotation. And we also may have to use chemicals that are far more expensive than some of the ones that we have. It can also decrease your yield and quality of plants as those weeds are competing for the resources of your crop. And we have to be aware that new chemistries are extremely slow to register and take years to come to fruition. So we have to work with what we have. So I just wanted to explain a little bit with herbicide groups, what they are. So that's the mode of action of how they control susceptible plants. I just wanted to give you a couple examples. So like group 2, that's amino acid inhibitors. Group 5, photosynthesis inhibitors. And just as Susanna had kind of pointed out, you can see the little picture that I have here. Most labels will have that on there. But you have to be aware, if you don't look at that, some products can have different label names, but they may have the same active ingredient, so they would be the same group. So rotating for just label name might not be sufficient. You also have some active ingredients that will have different names, but are in the same group as well. So just be aware of that. Always look at what the label says for what group it is. So some of the items that we can do for resistant management, using that integrated pest management, there's a lot of non-chemical controls we can use. Some of those examples might be hand weeding, tilling, mulch. Also, of course, rotating those herbicide groups. Don't be just using the same chemical group constantly, like number 2, just because it's cheap. You got to make sure that you use other ones. Proper rates are extremely important. If we're too low on the rates, we can cause weeds to survive. That can make them have the ability to develop resistance in the future for those chemicals. So just be careful, and then always know what's going on in your field. After you've applied that, see if you've controlled your weeds, see if you've your chemical is controlling what your target is. So that's all I have, but going into the future, I'm looking to do a bit more of a comprehensive weed resistance survey in BC. So I have my contact information here. If you can contact me if you have any weed populations that you're concerned about in your fields, I'd like to talk about it. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Garion. Any questions? Oh, Jack? Hey, Jack, I think you're still muted. Wonder if Rebecca or Gail can help Jack unmute, possibly. Maybe we can only mute. Okay, Jack, we can't hear you, but please put your question in the chat or contact Garion directly.
I'll put my contact info in the chat as well.
That's perfect. Thanks, Garion. Oh, we've got another question from Gurjinder. Go ahead.
Hi, I have a quick question about tank mixing. I think is it applicable to pesticide and
Yes, it's
right?
all of them. PMRA has put that in the pipeline, so it's for any chemical that you're going to be mixing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Garion. We will leave it there, but please do put any other questions in the chat or reach out to Garion directly.
We did have a question, Lindsay. What was the deadline for the label updates for tank mixing?
That's coming in effect for 2025 for tank mixing. The manufacturers had, they were supposed to update their labels by the end of 2024. So you should have new labels to look at for tank mixing.
Okay.
Okay, looks like Logan says good, thanks. Awesome. All right, Garion, we will now move on to Katie Goldenhar, provincial plant pathologist. And Katie will be doing a bit of a longer presentation here before giving the production guide updates.
Thanks, Lindsay. Gary, and you're still sharing. Could you stop sharing your screens? Take over. Thank you.
Sorry about that. It was on my other screen.
No, that's okay. Okay, good morning, everyone. I will just put this into presentation mode. As mentioned, I'm doing slightly longer of a presentation, but I'm going to try and make it super fun and super interesting, and so we can keep you engaged for the rest of this session. I am, as Lindsay mentioned, the plant pathologist here in Kelowna. So we're going to talk about fungicide fundamentals and kind of give a brief overview of how fungicides work. You know, Molly mentioned DAS and scab and that model, and there's already been an infection period in many areas. So you're already starting to think about using fungicides and how those fungicides work, especially from a preventative and a curative standpoint. And so we're going to talk about some fungicides in general groups, how they work, talk about wash off, all that good stuff. And then I'll briefly touch on resistance management. You've already heard some good information on that from Susanna and Garion. And then we'll briefly touch on some registration updates and some changes to the guide. And then, of course, I'm happy to take any questions now or later. So I can't do a presentation without talking about the disease triangle, because I think it's really important to understand that diseases are not just the cause of a pathogen or an organism. You actually need three things in order for diseases to occur, and that's the pathogen. So that's something like fire blight, apple scab, powdery mildew, but it's also the host and the environment. So you need that susceptible host. So in our cases, we normally grow them, but when we talk about management, you consider resistant or tolerant varieties. You can consider inducing natural defense responses, and fungicides are one way to do that. And then, of course, we have the pathogen. So when we're talking about disease management and controlling that side of the disease triangle, we're talking about using sanitation, so making sure that orchard floor is cleaned up from leaf litter, from mummies. But this is also where a lot of our fungicides play. They directly inhibit or they target that pathogen itself. But it's important to know that, again, just inhibiting that pathogen is not the only way that you can manage diseases. So also things like environment. So you need susceptible environment. So something like powdery mildew actually does not favor free moisture, but some of our other diseases like apple scab require certain levels of free moisture as well as fire blight in order to infect in a favorable temperatures. And so when we're looking at disease management and thinking about the environment side of the triangle, we're thinking about things like pruning to encourage air movement, irrigation management, you know, making sure that you're not making that foliage more wet than it has to be. There's things like delayed planting when you're putting a new planting in, making sure that that plant has the most success at defending itself from those pathogens. So I want to mention this because we're going to focus the rest on fungicides, but there are many other options when it comes to disease management. And fungicides are just one of the tools that we have. And I think understanding the way that fungicides work, instead of spraying and praying, by understanding those tools that you have in order to manage these diseases, you're going to be able to use them more efficiently and more effectively to manage your diseases. So we're going to talk a lot about what fungicides do and how they work in the plant and on that pathogen. So you're often used to hearing the words like preventative fungicides. So when fungicides work preventatively, this is before that plant is even infected. It's before you can see any symptoms, and it's the way that most fungicides work. If fungicides work in multiple ways, as many of them do, especially our single site or our systemic fungicides, they often work best preventatively. Next, we have curative. So as a plant pathologist, I don't love this word because I think to most people, they think curative means once I see a lesion, you're going to spray this product, it's going to remove that lesion from your plant. That's not how they work. Curative fungicides stop the growth once it's already infected through that plant, but it's before it's created any sporulation or lesions. So these are fungicides that we often refer to as kickback fungicides. And it's something like apple scab, where we know the infection cycle very intimately, and you have models to understand that that spore has maybe landed and germinated on that plant. You can still spray these fungicides. They will get in that plant and they will then spread and infect and prevent that infection from spreading further. Eradicants, again, I think this is how most people want fungicides to work. This is stopping the pathogen during lesion formation. You can see symptoms already, but almost none of our fungicides work this way. So you should never expect a fungicide to work as an eradicant. Oh, hold on. The other way, and the last one, is an anti-sporulant. So this means that it's stopping that lesion that's already grown from sporulating further and spreading secondary spores to the rest of your crop. There are several fungicides that work this way, but again, you're not preventing or curing that lesion that's already there. You're preventing it from sporulating and spreading to the rest of your crop. So they can be quite useful, but you're already seeing infection in your crop. So what this actually looks like is these are the different stages of different fungal pathogens. So here you have a spore that's on top of a plant. So when it comes to spore germination, your preventative fungicides are going to prevent that germination before it can get into the plant. Your curative fungicides are able to prevent that germination tube, that germ tube, once it's gotten into that plant here. This is the plant, this is the outside, this is the spore, this is it's moving in. This is how your curative fungicides work. So when you look at curative fungicides on the DAS model for something like apple scab, they're working at this stage. The eradicants, again, this is once you already have dead tissue that fungi is already spread within that lesion. It's not going to remove that fungi from that lesion itself. But we do have some that are anti-sporulent. So this is either on the top side or the bottom side of that leaf. When they're producing more spores, you can apply this fungicide and it will stop those spores from spreading to the rest of the crop. So an example is apple scab. So again, you have this primary apple scab period, which we are in right now. As soon as you have green tissue, those ascospores in that leaf litter are maturing. And when you have enough moisture, they're going to release and they are going to infect your crop. So preventative fungicides, again, most of our fungicides work this way, need to be applied before that infection period. So you see that rain coming or you have an indication that you might have an infection period, you can use preventative fungicides before that spore lands. Then we have curative. So this is often used because we know the infection cycle of apple scab very well. So if we had an infection period like we have had this week in many regions, these curative fungicides have anywhere from, I'd say, 24 to 72 hours. We'll talk about some specifics of kickback. So that's not after you see symptoms, that's after the infection has started. So that's why you have those wetting events and you know the model of this on the DAS system. You can use these curative fungicides to get into that plant and stop that mycelium before it causes a lesion. Eradicants, again, this is after you've seen symptoms, 7, 10, 14 days after we had that infection period. None of our fungicides are going to work this way. With apple scab, we also have secondary scab. So anti-sporulent fungicides can prevent those conidia from forming on the underside of the leaf. So if you have an infection, you might consider an anti-sporulent fungicide. But again, you're going to want to prevent those spores from landing and infecting the rest of your crop if you have an infection and you're dealing with secondary scab. So again, this life cycle goes around again, and you have the different fungicides available to manage those different life cycles. You might be wondering what fungicides work in different ways. Thankfully, there are a lot of resources, especially for apple scab, because we know that life cycle so well. This is from the Ontario Crop Protection Hub, and it looks through most fungicides that are available for use in apples and in apple scab. And it goes through their protectant activity, most of which are excellent to very good. Again, most fungicides work best preventatively, but you also have many that have post-infection activity. And so this is when you've seen that infection period, that infection has started, you have the ability to go in afterwards within this time period for these different fungicides, and they will still be effective at stopping that pathogen from growing. And then anti-sporulants, not eradicants, anti-sporulants. You have some fungicides with activity on that secondary Canidia formation if you have a primary infection period. And so as I mentioned, these are also on the DAS system. So this is just a screenshot, but you can see, hopefully you can see my mouse, but on the right-hand side, you have protectants, eradicants, and they'll have the number of hours that they will be effective after an application. Again, eradicants are still before you're seeing symptoms. So this is after an infection event that has been predicted based on the leaf wetness. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit more about how fungicides work. We'll start with mode of action. You've already heard a bit about this when it comes to insecticides and herbicides. So here we have an example of Maravon. We use a lot of terms when it comes to pesticides, and so I think it's important to make sure that we're all clear on what they mean. So you have the active ingredient. Maravon is a premix, so that means that it has 2 active ingredients, fluxaperoxide and pyraclostrobin. Their mode of action, which is how they kill that fungus or that pathogen, is respiration. So they stop that pathogen from breathing. The site of action is where they do that. So where they actually bind with that fungus in order to stop it from growing, stop it from reproducing. And in this case, there's 2 different site of actions. If you think back to biology 101, you have the mitochondria, you have different complexes. I won't get too much into this, but there's different complexes that are inhibited. So with that, that's how we get the FRAC code. So we have FRAC code 7 for fluxaperoxide. Those are our SDHI or succinase dehydrogenase inhibitors. And then we have pyraclostrobin, which belongs to our group 11s, and those are our QOIs. So what this actually looks like inside a cell, again, this is all credit to Dr. Jen Foster, who works for Syngenta Canada. We put together this presentation a while back, and she let me use these slides, but I think it's a really great illustration of how these products are actually working. So when I mentioned group 7s, like Maravon, that's our SDHIs, those are actually working here in the mitochondria. So this is a very microscopic view of that cell. And you have some products like Circadus, Excalia, who are working in this way. You also have our group 11s who are working also in the mitochondria, but at a different site. And so they are classified as different FRAC codes, so our group 11s, so Flint. We have group 9s, which work an amino acid biosynthesis. So Scala is an option. That's another group. So that's a group 9. We have group 1s, which work in tubulin polymerization. So that's our Senator. We have group 3s, which actually work on sterile biosynthesis, which is the fatty layer in the cell membrane of that fungus. And then we have multi-sites, which I'll talk a bit about in their importance in resistance management, which work on multiple cellular processes. So that's like bacillus or biologicals, mancozeb, Captan, very important for resistance management. And then, of course, we have a large number of premixes that premix these different groups together. And by premixing different groups together, it's a great resistance management tool because you're targeting that pathogen in multiple ways. You can think of these different groups as weapons that they're using to kill that fungus. And if you continually come at it with a knife, it's going to figure out a way to defend itself from a knife. So if you come at it with a knife, with a gun, with a bat, this is very crude, it's not going to be able to defend itself from all these different modes of action. And so that's what we're trying to do with these different groups. Again, this is why it's important, is resistance management. Know what group you're applying. You can look at the label, you can look at the spray calendar or the spray production guide. There's the group there for herbicides, insecticides, fungicides. Know if you're applying the same group. Okay, fungicides also work differently on their spectrum. So what determines the spectrum of a fungicide? You might look at a product and say, hey, this controls apple scab, powdery mildew, fly speck, a bunch of different options, or you might have a product that's very specific to powdery mildew. So a lot of those are just characteristic of the molecule itself, so just how it works. It can also be related to the chemical structure. You might have heard of new and old group 3s, so a new group 3 being Sevia. Some of our older group 3s like Nova, the chemical structure, it targets the same spot, but the chemical structure of that molecule is different. And therefore, it is able to have a wider spectrum. It has more efficacy on some resistant individuals because of that chemical structure of that molecule itself. Application rate, a lot of our products would be really effective if we applied them at 100 kilograms per hectare. But of course, we can't do that. There's so many other off-target things we have to consider. And so when companies are looking at registering products, they are looking at the most economical application rate that is effective on some diseases. And so again, that can matter. And then metabolism. So the way that a plant metabolizes a product is going to impact what it's going to work on. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But that is important because if a plant is able to really break down a molecule very quickly, it's not going to be super effective. Okay, we're going to talk about physical chemical properties, and that is really important when we talk about retention and how that product is moving, where you need to get it in that plant in order to make it perform well. So does it move up? Does it, when you apply it, does it then move up to new growth? Does it move down to the roots? Does it move through the leaf, so translaminar, or does it stay on the outside? So these are all important considerations, especially if you're dealing with products that you might be applying on longer intervals, or you have a rain that's come up and you want to know if you have to reapply. So when we talk about contact fungicides, contact and protectants are not the same, but most contacts are protectants. So something like Allegro or Downforce, these are fluazanam, coppers, mancozeb, sulfurs, Captan, Scholar. So a lot of our multi-sites are contact fungicides, meaning when you apply them on the surface of the leaf, this is a cross-section of a leaf. So this is the fungicide that you've just applied. It's not moving into that plant. It's staying on the surface. It's not moving. And so what this means is that you need good coverage because it's not moving. Once where you put it is where it's staying. You might need more frequent application because it's more prone to UV degradation or to wash off. And it means that formulation really matters. So there are some products that have stickers or spreaders in them, and that's where it matters, is these contacts that are not going to be moving once you're putting them on the surface of the leaf. You want it to cover as much surface as possible. So if you're using one of these products, these are the things you have to consider. The next group that we're going to talk about is one of the systemic sections, and that is xylem mobile or acropedal. So that means that it's moving up. So it's moving to new growth. So who are they? Most of our group 9s, some of our group 7s, so fluopyram. So this is in our Luna Tranquility and our Vellum Prime. Most of our group 11s, so we use a lot of group 11s, most group 3s, and our Ridamil Golds for our group 4. So that means that when you apply the product to the surface of the leaf, again, we have our cross section, it's going on the surface and then it's moving into that plant and it's moving up. So it's moving with water. Our xylem is our water movement. So it's moving to new growth. So these products can be really beneficial if you're having rapid growth, like you do in the spring. So again, just something to consider if you're using these products, or you need to use something that's going to move with the water and move in that plant. So again, it protects new growth. It has a longer duration of activity because it's not just staying on the surface. It's not prone to wash off or UV degradation, and it's typically rain fast very quickly. Okay, our next systemic groups are translaminar, which means that they land on the surface and they go to the bottom of the leaf only. So we have some group 3s like Sevia and Inspire Super, which includes that difenoconazole, which is another group. And most of our group 7s work this way. So like Excalia, Circadus, one of the active ingredients in Maravon, Pristine. So as I mentioned, they go on the surface of the leaf, they move down, and then they stay on the bottom. So this is beneficial because you're getting protection of both the top and the bottom side of the leaf. But it does mean that coverage matters, again, because it's not moving to the new growth. It's not moving within that plant. You do have longer duration because it's not getting diluted by that plant. It's not moving with it, but it is also typically rain fast, again, because it's getting into that tissue and it's holding in that tissue. Okay, and our last group is phloem mobile. So phloem is sugar movement within the plant. And these are our phos acids, so our alliette and our phosphorol. So what happens is they move on the top, they land on the top side of the leaf, they move in, and they move down. So this has a really great opportunity if you're dealing with a root disease and you want to put a foliar application on. So things like Phytophthora root rot, Aliette is registered this way, where you put a foliar spray on and it moves down, and that's just due to the chemical process of the phos acid products. But it does mean that they have a shorter duration of activity because they are moving very, very fast. But they are typically rain fast, like all our systemic products that are getting into that cell and into that tissue. Okay, and the last thing we're going to talk about is length of control. So a lot of this, you have to take into consideration what we've just talked about. So you have to think about your target. When is that target active? The physical chemical properties, as I mentioned, something like our group 7s and some of the newer group 3s are not moving within that plant, but they are binding and they are staying within that spot that you are applying them to. So they have a longer duration of activity just due to their chemical properties. Application rate can matter, and then also metabolism. So this brings us back to the metabolism of that plant itself. Something like those phos acid sprays are being moved very quickly, metabolized by that plant. So they do have some benefit, but again, we need to consider reapplication if you're worried about that. And the last one is potency. So how long does control relatively last? Again, a lot of this comes back to what we already talked about, but duration of control typically goes from contacts or non-systemic products because they're prone to UV degradation and wash off. We have our group 3s and our 11s that are being moved with the xylem. So they're being moved to the new growth. So again, they're diluted because they're being moved within that plant. And then we have our group 7s, which again are not moving to the new growth, but bind to the wax and are very slowly metabolized because they're staying within that one spot of the plant. So something to consider, especially if you're considering reapplication intervals, 7, 10, 14 days, just something to consider based on the group that you have applied. Rain fastness of fungicides. So this is often a question, I was a pathologist in Ontario that we get asked because there's a lot of rainstorms, but this can matter for your scab sprays in the spring if you're getting a heavy rain. Again, think of everything you just learned. Systemic products are typically going to be much more rain fast than your contacts. But if you're using a contact fungicide or a multi-site fungicide, typically 1 inch of rain or 2.5 centimeters will remove around 50% of contact fungicide residue. This is just a rule of thumb that the industry has used. And then over 2 inches of rain or 5 centimeters will remove most of the residue. There's a great article that was put up on the On Fruit blog that goes into this in more detail, includes insecticides as well, but just something to consider. For time, I'm going to skip through this. A lot of the same principles for herbicides and insecticides when it comes to resistance management also apply for fungicides. These are all living organisms that are prone to resistance, and you really just need to be targeting those organisms, the pathogens, the insects, the weeds, with different weapons, with different frac groups, different ways that they are working on that group. You can tank mix or you can rotate when it comes to fungicides. You're just trying to limit the number of applications by using IPM tools as well. Okay. This rest of this is just going to focus on things that have changed since I've been in this position, looking at the different products that have been registered or I've added. So again, this is in the spray schedules section. I think it's important that if you see any errors or omissions that you constantly let ministry or BCFGA staff know. When it comes to performance claims on some of these products, I thought it would be important, especially because we talk more about biologicals, the level of control that you can expect from these performance claims. So what do I mean by performance claims? I mean control, suppression, or partial suppression. So I think what's great about our system is that when companies are submitting products for registration, they have to prove that that product is effective on the pest, on the crop. And so by submitting that data, that efficacy data, they're either looking at a control claim, a suppression claim, or in the part for biofungicides, a partial suppression. So if you see control, that's the efficacy data is expecting a control between 80 to 100%. So these are going to be the most effective products when they say control. A lot of products say suppression. Those are typically between 60 to 80% disease control ratings. And then partial suppression is more common now with some of our biofungicides, and that is less than 60% control. So it's important, especially if you're using biofungicides, to understand the level of control is not going to be the same as using some of our older chemistries or some of our single site products. And this is all based on PMRA's guidelines. So this is all, done by them at the stage of registration. Something that I'm going to mention that I think is really important is this year there's been a change to the Dithane Rain Shield fungicide product, and this is a mancozeb. So this is a group M3, very commonly used for apple scab. It used to be just 6 kilograms per hectare, max 4 applications. That was the reevaluation. That was what the labels were changed to. But it is a very common practice in many parts of North America to use half rates when it comes to using mancozeb. And so PMRA, Corteva were willing to work together to have this rate range of 2 to 6 kilograms per hectare. And then it's just a max amount of product per year. So if you're using 6 kilograms, it's still only 4 applications. But if you're using 3 kilograms, so a half rate, you can go up to 8 applications. And if you're using the lowest rate at 2 kilograms per hectare, you can go up to 12 applications. The interval for harvest is 77 days. So again, this is an early season product, but I thought it was worth mentioning because again, these half rates are quite beneficial to apple growers. Okay, the next one is Gatton. So this was recently expanded. This is a group U13, and this is a powdery mildew specialist. So it only works on powdery mildew. It's registered on a wide number of crops, and it was expanded to include apples. And so you'll see that on the spray guide. So again, you have powdery mildew, you have a rate range, you have intervals, all this good stuff that you will find on the spray guide. Another exciting one that is a new fungicide group is Migiwa iflufleniquin. Say that 5 times fast. It's a group 52 product, and it's registered on all palm fruit. And so it's registered on powdery mildew and apple scab. And again, this is an important one because it is a new group. I've talked a lot about group 3s, 7s, 11s. Those are main single sites, especially for apple scab. And so you have this one as a new product to bring into your rotation. This one was added. This is just another group 7, Excalia. So this is a scab and a powdery mildew product for apples. And again, you'll see this information there in the guide. The next one is Buran. So this is a garlic powder. This is not classified by FRAC. It is considered a biological. It is registered on apples and pears, and you can see pest controlled, powdery mildew, pest suppressed, apple scab, pear scab, fire blight. There are very specific instructions on this product that you'll find on the guide, depending on the pest that you're targeting. I have seen some data, and I just wanted to quickly share that for apple scab with relation to Buran. So this was a report that was put in the pest management research reports. Buran is a garlic powder. It is active post-infection. So once that spore has actually started to germinate, and you can see here post-infection timing. So these are degree day hours. I highly recommend you reach out to someone, your supplier, the company that sells this, myself, if you're considering using this product, because it can be effective. As I showed here, you have untreated control at 98%. Using Buran, you have 14%. But it needs to be reapplied very quickly after an application, after an infection event, and it needs to be reapplied often. And that is what you'll find for many of our biological products, is they need to be applied at the right timing and very quickly reapplied if you have another infection period. LifeGuard is a new biological product. So this is actually a plant defense inducer. And so it induces the natural defense of a plant, and it is labeled for suppression of fire blight. And it's important for any plant defense inducer product that you're getting that on a couple days before you have an infection, because it's inducing those natural responses within that plant. EcoSwing, there's actually a webinar going on right now, and I think there's another one at 1 put on by Gowan. This is a new biological extract of Swingalia gluteosa. It's a biological BMO1, that stands for biological mode of action with multi modes of action, and it's an extract. And it is registered on stone fruit as well as palm fruit for apple scab, brown rot, and then you see that partial suppression again for botrytis gray mold there. Oxidate. So this is a general sterilant. And so it's these hydrogen peroxide and peroxidic acid. It's not classified by FRAC. It's registered on our palm fruit for powdery mildew, partial suppression of scab and fire blight. I'm running out of time, so I'm really whipping through this, but this is some really excellent summary work done by Washington State University that looked at a lot of biologicals and compared their relative disease control to our antibiotics for fire blight, which are, you know, the standards. They provide very good control when we have infection risk from fire blight. But you can see here that there is some biological products that are providing really good control. And this data is summarized over a lot of trials, a lot of years. Of course, you have to make sure that they're registered in Canada. That's always a statement that, you know, you need to be aware of when you're looking at American data. But up here at the top, you have relative disease suppression from streptomycin. So it's, again, the highest, the most effective product. And then you have some biologicals here down here. So you have Quava, you have some of our coppers. So you have Quava here providing some disease control. And then Oxidate, as I just mentioned, a general sterilant providing some control there. And then you have Serenade and Double Nickel, which are registered. Again, you've got to make sure these are registered in Canada. But this is just to show that you can get some suppression from these biologicals, but your control, your expectation of control is not going to be the same. So these are going to be used under lower disease pressure in combination with some of your other management tools, in rotation with some of these antibiotics. But just mentioning that, you know, there's a lot of new biofungicides coming out, something to be aware of. Last few slides. ProBlad biofungicide has replaced Fracture. So Fracture was in the guide. This is another biological. ProBlad is the new fungicide. Fracture has been discontinued. This is the new fungicide to replace Fracture. When you're thinking about replanting, there are some nematicide options. So the one is Velum Prime. So I mentioned fluopyrim is a FRAC group 7. It actually also works on nematodes. We have to remember that there are many beneficial nematodes, and we sometimes use nematodes to attack soil dwelling insect species. But what we're targeting here is plant parasitic nematodes. So nematodes that can feed on the roots of the plant and cause some general decline or wounds for entry from other pathogens. And so you do have some of these options on the nematode page of the production guide. So fluopyrim there is one of them. One thing to mention here is that fluopyrim is also in Luna Tranquility. So there are general guidelines for if you're using Luna Tranquility foliarly to beware of using it as a soil application as well. Celebro nematicide is also registered for non-bearing stone fruit to suppress a species that we do not have. It hasn't been present or hasn't been located in Okanagan orchards. So just mentioning that, you might hear that product tossed around. Just mentioning that root knot nematode is not known to occur. Okay, and then disease page updates, little cherry disease, cytospore canker, X disease, and fire blight have all been updated with some new information. So recommend you check those out if you are interested. And with that, I am done. There's some more information. Happy to take any questions now or later.
Thank you, Katie. There are a couple of folks who are really keen to get your presentation as a PDF. Will that be allowed?
Yeah. Yep.
Great.
Happy to I'll share that with you and Gail, and then you can send that out. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Great presentation. And then Alan Gatsky made a comment in the chat. Alan, I don't know, do you want to turn on your mic and ask Katie that question directly?
Yeah, am I on?
Yep, loud and clear.
Yeah, we saw it last year and it seems to be even worse this year. From that early fall cold snap that we got, and the leaves, you know, the abscission didn't complete. And now we're seeing last year and right now at bloom, I've got some gala trees that buds are barely pushing on some parts of the trees, and yet we're at 1/2 inch green on the other part. And you can see necrosis in the bark. And so it looks like a dieback, and it's not just on my farm, it's up and down the whole valley. I've seen this phenomena appearing, and in high density orchards, I'm seeing complete trees that have died from that event. And so my concern is, you know, we're out there today spraying on trees that are half-inch green and then some buds that are totally closed. I'm just interested in any comments on what I can anticipate insofar as significant disease infestation going forward, in particular at this time of year when there's such a difference. And I don't know what the hell's going on in the tree, and if this is gonna lead to this necrosis. You can see it right on the bark. If I'm gonna end up with, in some cases, I've seen like 30% of a block being significantly damaged. I'm just wondering if there's any work being done to better understand what's going on there and what we can expect in terms of disease protection.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's a lot going on there that more people could comment than I can. But I mean, I think the concern with delayed maturity or difference maturity throughout the block is definitely a concern, especially for something like fire blight and applications during bloom. I think with the winter injury, there's been a lot more increases in cankers. A lot of those pathogens or those fungi are opportunistic. And so if there's a crack or there's a issue in those trees, you're going to get some canker formation. And I think, there's been some work done at AFC relating to tree decline and, the issues and the complexes that go involved, but one of them was water deficits. And, when you have those cankers, you have reduced water uptake and that being a concern. But as far as solutions, they're still very, very limited in those solutions. I don't know if anyone else has comments, but I think it's complicated with these perennial systems when you're getting multiple winter events and these pathogens that might have been dormant or not able to infect when those trees were healthy, but are causing issues now.
Thanks, Katie and Alan. You may have his contact information already, but Jesse McDonald at the research station would be a good person to connect with. He has compiled a lot of the rapid apple decline work that was done over the last few years. And I think he's cultured quite a few things associated with decline in apple trees. So that would be interesting to connect over that. Any other questions for Katie?
Lindsay, it's Lisa Jarrett speaking. Hey, Katie, I just wanted a quick note. So your comment about root knot nematode not being found in the valley, that's specific to apple. Is that what you're speaking to? Because the work through Tom Forge, where we've looked at lesion, root knot, dagger, ring, based on different crops, we have found root knot in veg. And actually across the board, but not in low numbers. So specifically for cherry, dagger is the focus, right? So Corteva continues to work to get that on the label, but just maybe a comment and maybe we can just chat offline about that.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. No, and that was just a comment that was already existing for the Okanagan orchard. So yeah, if any data to show the nematode population would be great. Yeah, we can chat for sure.
Awesome, thanks.
This is Wilfred Mennel here. I do have a question for Katie about the organic usage or acceptability of some of these biofungicides.
Yeah, I mean, that's always a little more complicated because you have to check with your certifying body. So a lot of the biologicals could be certified to be organic, but it's beyond my understanding. Yeah.
Thank you.
Katie, if I might, Wilf, I did have a look at some of the biologicals to make sure that they were OMRI certified, and I'll have the list that will go into the DAS system will be those with the OMRI certificate that the CBs have generally accepted.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Molly. Final calls. That was a great presentation, Katie. I'm sure that some of us will just take a little bit of time to digest that information, but people could reach out to you via email or phone with follow-up questions. Okay. Awesome. Okay, well, that concludes our update section of the meeting. I do want to note that there were a couple additional sections of the guide that were updated this past year. So the fruit tree nutrition section of the guide. I'll just share my screen here quick. Has been heavily updated with research and findings from Dr. Mehdi Sharifi and contributed to by many different industry folks. And you can see here that there are pretty extensive sections for each nutrient, as well as sampling, testing, and interpretation of different nutrient testing, and then some background and research recommendations for application of fertilizer and other amendments. And the plant growth regulators section was also updated this past year, so please do check that out and let me know if you have any comments or concerns about either sections. And then as an additional reminder, if you are looking to see what's been updated over the past year or several years, you can always click on the change log here, and that shows which products were added to the guide over the year. And on another note, I don't know how many Creston growers we have here. We will be hosting a session specifically for Creston growers on April 23rd at 8 a.m. and we'll get the Zoom link out soon. That session will be open to Okanagan growers, but there will be content that you've heard at the Southern Interior Hort Show or at other industry meetings. So specific for Creston, but everyone's welcome. And that is it for me. And I will give the floor to Gail Nelson to give some reminders and updates.
Thanks, Lindsay. So we got a few questions around whether the recording would be available. And yes, so we'll do some editing and try to make the recording of the meeting available as soon as possible. In the past, we've also, facilitated growers who are not able to attend on the day with being able to view the video and then do a short quiz afterwards. So we'll make that facility available as well this year. And yeah, so there were some other questions that were specific for the BCFGA that I will answer offline. But thanks everybody for coming and for staying to the end. And if you have any questions on the content or on what was presented, please don't hesitate to reach out to Lindsay or myself, or if you have the contact details of the presenters themselves.
Okay, thanks everyone. Happy start to the season.
Thanks. Bye.
Gail is.
Hi, Greg.
Hi, Gail. Hate to tell you this, but I have never done chat before in my life. Can I just phone in my?
Sure. Yes.
Everything's up to date. I'm certified to spray. I'm a license to kill up until 2027.
Greg,
Okay.
do you have my email?
Who's this?
It's Rebecca.
I got your phone number.
Okay, you can use that too.
Okay.
If you could
thank
text
you.
or email your pack details, that'd be great.
Yeah. Okay. I'll try it. I'll try and get it to you as quick as I can. As soon as my wife is
Thank
home,
you.
we'll get on it. Okay. I'm
Perfect.
elderly.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you for this presentation and have a nice day.
You too.
Now another thing, could we have these grower meetings like this earlier? Because we're out spraying. We've been spraying now for 2-3 weeks. Could we have something like this at the beginning of, March?
Well, I mean, we can have some discussions on the dates. Usually, well, what we've had in the past year or two is that a lot of the horticultural information,
Oh, it's
growers
coming
would
in
get
late?
that. No, growers would have that at like the Hort Show,
Mm-hmm.
and then this tree food production guide meeting would be a lot of specifics on updates to the production guide. But we're also trying to collaborate with the ministry, with other industry associations to have and with Molly Thurston, for example, the BC DAS coordinator, to make sure that we have lots of contact points with growers. So we're making sure that we have meetings that don't cover the same topics, but provide the necessary information at the right time.
Well, I
we're
just
we're
noticed
trying to
that
do that work.
we only had about 77, was it 77 participants?
Hmm.
Because it's such a beautiful day out there. I imagine a lot of people are still trying to catch up and spray and prune like I should be doing.
Yeah, yeah. So
Anyways,
it's a
it's just a
balance of
food for thought. Just
yeah,
food for
it's a
thought.
balance of wanting to make sure that you have all the available information, and also not being too late into the season where growers are actively pruning and doing their other orchard management activities.
Well, we're starting to spray our oil and closure on. Well, we should be doing it right now. It's ready to go. So we're probably running about a week and a half to 2 weeks ahead of Kelowna. So if that helps anybody out.
Yeah, we're trying to really find the balance in
Yeah,
terms of the
okay.
timing.
Yeah. Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you
thanks,
for the
Greg.
presentation. I'll phone all this information up and okay.
Okay, thanks all.
Okay. Thank you.